Hi, friends and family. Hi, loved ones. Hi, fools. Hey, I get to try something new today. So I'm recording with a laptop instead of with my phone. We'll see how that goes. So, how are y'all doing today? Just want to share some reviews, some things I'm reviewing and looking into. Um, my last few videos, I've been sharing about the dismemberment and the bargain without knowing, and like all things related to that individuation and self-realization play practice, this alchemical play practice, that I've been choosing for myself, choosing for my whole well-being, my true wellspring, my true fullness, my truthfulness, my true wholeness, my true being. And so doing the best I can through all of this and choosing to be love for all of me. And so, what I've been looking through and looking into, um, reviewing is like some of the things that came up last June. And a lot of those things were like the shadow wounds of the collective feminine. And so, just kind of looking into some things and what it means, like what I get to own and what do I get to be accountable for? What do I get to integrate? And how do I get to show up for me and uh, play in this grand story? And so there's a couple other short videos that I did today, and so I'll just surrender right now to what I think I'm supposed to say and ask like what my soul and what my heart wants to say, wants to express today about like certain things, that I've been that are being revealed to me, that are being shown to me, that I've asked to see, and that I've asked to receive, that I'm open to receive and willing, like to receive those messages for the benefit of the whole and the benefit of our integrity. Yeah, for the love I have, for the love I am, and for all that I love and that matters to me. And so what it is it has to do with the value and the worth and our belonging, you know, our longing to belong and to be received. And so a lot of those wounds that I'm looking at, they're around abandonment, rejection, denial, and perfectionism. Like the false beliefs about what or who we are and who we're supposed to be or who we ought to be or who we need to be valued, worthy, and enough. Yeah. And so a lot of that, it's just a story, really. And so just kind of looking into those things, and we'll just, start and go and see like where we end up. So there was a few things like that were coming up for me to trigger me and bother me, and it was these wounded aspects asking for inclusivity or attention or forgiveness or just being included, inclusivity, being integrated and honored. And so sometimes, like when the shadow is misunderstood or it's ignored, certain feelings can feel like really hostile or really super intense sometimes. Like we don't know like where a certain reaction is coming from, or there's like some kind of unconscious drive that gets obsessive in certain ways, like if it's not recognized. And so, just kind of looking at some things about like challenges, because it was a challenge last June, and I felt like, man, like I was being like very challenged, and I felt like quite the challenger. And so, playing the role of the adversary and the foe and the black sheep and the outsider and the exile and the orphan and the outcast, and by stepping out of that role of shadow caregiver. And that was my comfort zone, was to be the caregiver, to always, and the the peeper pleaser, and maybe that's a Freudian slip. So maybe it's like the appearance of wanting to micromanage or control the perceptions around how others see me. So that's funny, the peeper pleaser, the people pleaser, and like the good girl in a lot of ways, even though I don't have any issues playing the role of the rebel. you know, yeah, I always had such a conflict between my wild child and my good girl. And so, yeah, there's some kind of funny things, like huge inner conflicts of what I needed to be, like in order to belong and be accepted in the group, and then also being true to me. So, how do I do that? Like, please everyone and be true to me? Well, it's just not. It's just not done, Like, it's impossible, like, to please everyone else. And believe me, I've tried. I do my best, but like, yeah, I mean, because it feels good to give, and it feels good to care for others, and it feels good to be received and accepted and adored and admired, or yeah, all of that, all of those things. And to feel like proud of ourselves, or to know that someone was proud of us. And so, yeah, those are some of the things that are coming up. So, yeah, I really like got into this and dug a lot of stuff up. So, the last week or two, I've just been looking at like the spiritual ego, because she's been coming up a lot in my writings. So, the spiritual ego, and then the other day, like the superego, and I was like, oh, I don't know much about the superego. I want to look into that one, and so like I have a couple things, few things to share and review. So just looking at my journal from last week, and when this started coming up for me, I'm not sure if this is, yeah, we'll see what's going on here. Let's see. All right, try new things. So, yeah, the blame and the shame and the guilt stories were coming up. And the things that seemed like threatening, I guess, threatening to the ego, to the ego's sense of self, or the false image. And so just looking at the hamster wheel of illusion and running through the body of pain, creating the nightmare or this messy dream, and making us believe in our false images, false realities of suffering, trauma, and disease. So I'm willing to own my own bullshit and my power to love and be accountable to me. I allow the rest to exist. I allow it to fall away. OMG, I just realized that my beef with the stupid, or the stupidity, is related to my fear of being wrong, or being seen as wrong, or my dislike of being seen as wrong. It doesn't please me very much, yeah, being seen as wrong, because I've always believed I was wrong and I was never enough. So, yeah, it was just like always an obsessive need to control or manage how other people would see me, which is, yeah, silly. It's a silly being silly, silly ego being silly. And to prove that I was right, to prove that I was worthy, to prove that I was enough, to prove that I was worthy to belong. And so this was my, my fears of being seen as wrong, and yeah, not liking that. My dislike of feeling that wrongness and being manipulated. So to hide myself and pretend that I'm all right. Yeah. Please the other so I could be seen as right. Yeah, that was my comfort zone. So it's not really like this thing that bothers me or triggers me about like some of the ignorance. It's not just the ignorance, yeah, that's really here bothering me at play. It's that fear of being wrong or being seen as wrong and being exiled or rejected or having to give my power away. Like, I thought those were my only choices. Yeah. And so, yes, it just, the unnecessary pain reinforcing the wounds of separation and the victim blame game. So, this is the immature, undeveloped ego personality games, the wheel of samsara, mental and emotional ignorance and slavery. So, in the internal and the external dynamics, this obsessive compulsion or strategy, this survival strategy about what I need to prove that I am not, need to prove that I'm not this so that I can be seen as right. So I need to prove that I'm worthy, to prove that I belong. So that's interesting and pretty stupid. LOL. An implanted story loop to keep me chasing my own tales of exile and reinforce the pain of separation. Silly egos, tricks are for kids. Oh, silly dear. Let's go and move along from here. There's room for you right here, dear ego. Thanks for helping me get along and be right here. So, and it actually seems like it comes back around to the motherfucking tyrant, the ego's guard of what I'm not allowed to be, me fighting against me denying my dual nature and rejecting what I believe that I am not or am not supposed to or allowed to be worthy, to be enough, to be good, to be accepted by the group, to be included, to belong, to be loved, and to be true. Fighting or denying, defending, rejecting this tyrant distortion and overcorrection of the victim judge, lower ego, the undeveloped conscience, the misdirected force, a false perception of control that there's only one right way to be, to see, to experience, to learn, to grow, to become all things. Pretty hilarious indeed. Silly beings being silly. And so, believing there's only one way, LOL, when love is all, always. The bargain without knowing and dismemberment. And so, I have been, looking at that, the handless maiden story in Women Who Run with the Wolves. And gotten a lot out of that so far. And I stumbled upon that like last month, and it's just the gift that keeps giving. And she had said, Clarice Pinkola Estes, the author, had said when she teaches that to different groups or whatnot, she would spend either 7 days, 7 weeks, or even 7 months on that story because there was so much in that. And I can see now why that, why the time was taken to digest, assimilate, and integrate all of that. So what I wrote about the dismemberment today was the dismemberment, a separation, separating the wheat from the chaff, sorting through what is useful from what is not or no longer is needed or viable, letting go of what no longer serves or supports our true wellness and well-being, our true nature, our wellspring of true being. My new true whole full stories. Love is the remedy. Divine truth is the balm. Simplicity. And so looking into some of the stories and some of the themes that are emerging again and that relate to last June. And so I did go back into my journals from last year and take a look at those, and those were like just a treat to have and to explore again. And just I'm so grateful that I've been working through this and recording all of these things, and it's just amazing to me. So I super appreciate and value the work and I acknowledge the work I'm doing for me and for we and for the integrity of the whole, for in service to humanity. And so that quote from Caroline Myss that I read a couple days ago about the biggest gift you can give someone else is yourself, a full, healthy self. And so it's not just the physical. There's the mind, body, spirit connection. And so we got to look into certain things in different ways. Like, there's not only one way to see things or to view things or to experience life and experience our own ways of being. And um, so like some old resentments and things that were coming up, and like it does have to do with this belief about our value and our worth and our belonging, or are we worthy of belonging, and what parts of ourselves have we had to hide away or reject or give away in order to belong, in order to feel included, or part of the whole. And so just looking at some of the archetypes and some of the stories and witnessing and observing when these certain aspects do come up, and have a story to tell or a message for me. And so just looking at like some of the themes that were coming up, which were like immature children of the fallen patriarchy, and archetypal daddy issues, shame, blame, suffering, the narcissist and the codependent, the asshole, the prison guard, the false guru and false power, the wolf in sheep's clothing, the saboteur, and the wounded feminine, forgetting who we really are. Power, what's my relationship to authority and to the status quo? Yeah. What are my survival strategies for self-preservation and that false image of the ego? Persecution themes and rebelliousness. Yeah, I felt like the outlaw and the outsider, and the scapegoat, the black sheep. And so the undeveloped ego, the hero, the dragon and the damsel, the rescuer, the devil, the challenger, the adversary, the wizard, the hero, the magician, the initiate, the creator, the artist, the weaver, the architect, the builder, and the leader. So the comfortable, the known, the safe comfort zones, the life that we know, the payoff zone, just surrender, control. We really don't know. We don't even know that we don't even know. It's okay not to know. Just let it unfold, allow and be shown, trust and let go. Just be in the flow, embrace the unknown, be here and let go, breathe and let go. Show up and let go, relax and let go. Thank you, I know, I'm supported, I let go. Thank you, I know that it's okay not to know. Thank you for the support that's available now and holding all of the whole. Thank you for the gifts of this journey of the whole. Thank you for the gift of surrendering and letting go. Thank you for the gift, trust, strength, faith, grace in letting go. Durga, Kali, Sekhmet, Isis, Hathor, the Great Mother, Kuan Yin, Mary, Sophia, Athena, and Aurora. And so, just looking at certain things. So what else is possible and what can I see? How to clear these distortions or redirect this energy for a more empowering state within me. Discernment is a skill we develop and learn. It's an opportunity to come home to ourselves and relearn. Maybe just this history, this history of needing to prove I am right and I am worthy. And so, like, going into forgiveness again and a willingness to remember again, to breathe and begin again. And so some of these stories that were coming up, like feelings of anger and resentment, like with the collective feminine and with like some of my friends and soul sisters. And what those stories were about, like I was kind of like, feeling some major disappointments because of my expectations and because of my inner idealist and my tragic romantic and, my epicure and my codependent. Like, so my survival strategies were like, oh, just, either please people or, to be needed, like that shadow caregiver. And stepping out of that role, it was like an all or nothing kind of a thing. It was I'm all in or I'm out of here kind of a thing. So it was like a conflict, yeah, between that wild child and that good girl. And so, perfectionist, idealist. So I was angry with my sisters for not knowing better or for not being better, for not knowing, for being human, for being limited in certain ways related to vision and discernment, expectations, disappointments, projections, survival needs, narcissistic codependence. So there was those narcissistic and codependent programs, strategies, and hierarchies. Maybe feeling resentful for the feelings of rejection, non support, silence. Yeah, not being seen, not being heard. Jealousy, envy, reinforcing shame, pain, and blame, devaluing, devouring roles and stories. So, like the smother mother and the control freak and the devouring mother. So, the assumptions, the judgments, and the condemnation, exclusions, the conditional acceptance or approval. I'll approve of you if you do this, or if you prove this, you know. And so it's like, yeah, misread, misinterpreted, misunderstood, misjudged, misrepresented, miserable. Mistook. What is a miss? What is a miss? What have I missed? And what do I miss? So many missteps, but part of the dance. The shadow idealist has a distorted lens. So that she polishes and crafts her impossible standards and her impossible tasks. Impossible because it cuts us in half, the dismemberment. Yeah. So it seemed like it was like the martyr, the miser, and the beggar that were coming up in this little triangle. So the martyr, the miser, and the beggar, denial of what is being offered, given, and presented. And so, yeah, the psychic hands, the healed heart, the healed soul, the healed mind, the healed vessel, the healed body, the healed whole, to know all that we are. And so today I was looking at like some things that were coming up because it was like, okay, so what is it that I'm not supposed to be? Like, what is it that I'm defensive about? And what is this resentment about, really? So, kind of looking into it and some kind of distortion around just wanted to check and still, yeah, it's just like, we'll get used to this somehow. Just letting go of control. So, some kind of distortion around what I'm not supposed to be worthy, to be enough, to do enough, to give enough, to love enough, to care enough, to seem enough. Yeah. To be approved of, to belong, to be included, to be seen as right, good, whole, complete, valued, worthy, enough. To be me and to be received. Is that why I'm mad at the goobers of gullibility and stupidity? Are they not allowed to be goobers and whatever else they happen to be or be playing at being? Can I be a good enough goober too? LOL. Yeah, just a fucking knob and a mind trickery, self doubt, and self pity, devaluing lack and poverty consciousness programming. It feels like, yeah, a Cassandra complex. And there's this wounded aspect that is asking for reception and attention, some kind of purging and release. Something is asking to be reclaimed. It feels like a spiritual ego type of thing, and the mother superior, exile, outcast, scapegoat, outsider, trickster, tyrant, judge, martyr, victim, miser, false guru, the adversary, villain, monster, fraud, clown, imposter, liar, pretender, poser, usurper, saboteur. Rejection, betrayal, and abandonment. There it is. The saboteur, the guardian of choice. There's always a motherfucking choice. To claim my voice and all my ways of being. Through being all of me, through loving all of me, through being all my love for me. Being me authentically. Being here as all my love for all of me. Come back home to all of me. I am that, I am all that. This love I am for all of me. Through all of me, through being me, I am this love. So be. So be. So, what I found out too is the last few days I've had some realizations. And I've told my share of lies and trauma stories. And I realize that I have reinforced real lies. Really, yeah, those real lies and those ego stories. And I was a very skilled liar when I was determined that I needed to be to protect myself or preserve my false image and my ego identity, or to justify my own survival strategies, my choices, words, beliefs, and actions. Yeah, the addict, the actor, and the not enough stories, fear and desire cycles related to pride, greed, envy, vanity. Please see me as worthy, desirable, valuable, enough, and right to be. So I can be loved, included, praised, adored, needed, worthy of belonging. So it stems from rejection and betrayal, fear of abandonment, exclusion and exile, generational or multi generational, ancestral, cultural, and personal patterns, unexplored potential and power. Be honest and be truthful with yourself, and you will save yourself a lot of pain, that guilt, shame, and trauma. So I am transparent and I am willing to see clearly all I get to see about me: transparency, integrity, and soul strategies, returning home to me, to my wholeness that I am, uncovering and recovering, soul retrieval alchemy. So I discovered that there was a survival strategy in this obsessive compulsive need almost, and I didn't know where it was coming from either, but I could see that it was like all about reinforcing some kind of pride story. I wanted someone to be proud of me and to affirm me and to validate me. And so wanting to make others proud of me, and so to please others, or to prove that I'm worthy and right to be me, that I am enough, so I could be understood and seen, heard, and be seen as worthy. So I am seen and I am heard and I am worthy. I am enough. I love and I am loved. I am valued. I am enough. I belong. I am safe and I am protected. So the guilt and the shame and the fear, loathing and anxiety, the vicious cycles of the emotional pain body, fear and desire cycles that perpetuate and recycle so much pain through the rejection, abandonment, and denial. That's the betrayal of ourselves, going against ourselves for external value, for that external support and secure approval within the group or the tribe or the collective or the family or the hive. So, what I realized was that I really didn't like myself or trust myself in certain relationship dynamics or patterns with certain people, with lovers and friends. Yeah. And certain family members. I wasn't being honest with myself or with the other, and part of me knew that, but not enough of me knew how to break the cycle. So that's, yeah, jealousy, envy, resentment, passive aggressive dynamics, damsel and rescuer, the martyr, miser, judge, savior, hero, victim, narcissist, and codependent. So it's also a fear or fears of being harmed, scapegoated, persecuted, victimized, blamed, shamed, exiled, devalued, dismissed, and disallowed and defiled, punished, forsaken, denied, and humiliated. A belief, yeah, that these others are a danger to me because they are dangerous in their zealotry, frenzy, and their own survival strategies. So be kind, relax, unwind, and remind, relax into love, and be mine, be thine. Be one at peace within me. Forgive them for not knowing. Forgive myself for not knowing. Yeah. So it's all about domination and control, false power, false light, false control. The usurper of the true light, that might makes right, the superego. What is the superego? The one that believes it is the only God at the center of the universe? Maybe it's time to investigate that one. So, yeah, before I looked into that, I was writing some things down. The petulant child, the pessimist, the world is all going to shit cynic, the helpless and powerless victim, the whore, the saboteur, and the judge, the martyr, the sacrificial lamb, and the scapegoat, the tyrant, the orphan, the fool, and the know-it-all, rigid defenses and control mechanisms of the lower ego, to control or stay and remain in our dysfunctional comfort zones, reinforcing our sense of control, sanitized, micromanaged, rigid mind control, the weak or the immature ego, fragile covert narcissist, and the virtuous victim slave child. And so, yeah, after I wrote that, I was like, I'm going to follow this curiosity and look into this and like just typed in what is the superego. And so what I found was from an article titled Id, Ego, and Superego, and that was by Simply Psychology by Saul McLeod. So I just wrote down like this little thing here about the superego. The superego incorporates the values and morals of society which are learned from one's parents and others. The superego consists of two systems, the conscience and the ideal self. The superego has the function of persuading the ego to turn to moralistic goals rather than simply realistic ones and to strive for perfection. The conscience can punish the ego through causing feelings of guilt. The ideal self, or the ego ideal, is an imaginary picture, a false image, of how you ought to be and represents aspirations of how to treat other people and how to behave as a member of society. So, behavior or self-policing standards of the tyrant ego, that's mine, standards which fall short of the ideal self may be punished by the superego through guilt, through making us feel like we're not enough. Yeah, through those guilty, like we let other people down, the disappointments and all of that. The superego can also reward us through the ideal self when we behave properly, by making us feel proud or superior. Yeah. So it was like about that comparison and that competition of better than and lesser than. Yeah. So if a person's ideal self is too high a standard, then whatever the person does will represent or feel like failure. And that's exactly what it was all the time. Like I felt like I could never give enough, do enough, be enough. And I always felt like I was wrong and wrong for being. And so it's like that was why that obsessive need for that control and that obsessive compulsive need to prove I was worthy and to prove that I was right and to prove that I was enough. And so that I could feel like I was enough. And that was like, yeah, all from always feeling inferior. And so I think it's an overcorrection in certain ways, like, yeah, to pretend like we have it figured all out. And I'll be the first one to admit, I don't have it figured out. Like, I know we're all winging it as we go. We have our best guesses, you know? So, the ideal self and the conscience are largely determined in childhood from parental values and how you were brought up. So, yeah, that's from Simply Psychology, Id, Ego, and Superego by Sal McLeod. So, it has to do with not enough stories, pride, shame, feelings of failure, and guilt. The idealist, the perfectionist, the judge, jury, and executioner, the martyr, the wounded parent, the wounded child, the fraud, imposter, and saboteur. The funhouse mirror distortions of what of who we believe we are, of who we think we are, of what we think we are, what we think we're supposed to be, or should be, or ought to be worthy, to be enough, to be accepted, to be acceptable, to be worthy of loving, worth being, worth seeing, worth valuing, and worthy of inclusivity. So is this the reason for all the virtue signaling? To prove that I am or we are worthy? To reinforce the false image or the false beliefs of external authority, validating who or how we're supposed to be in order to be worthy, our safety and security, our comfort zones, our self-made slavery, cycles and standards of hypocrisy, psychopathy, immaturity, pain, and suffering. To do with abandoning, betraying, denying, rejecting ourselves and our responsibility. And so, yeah, it's just looking into pride. So pride and rewards versus punishment, guilt and failure. Of course, like we want to be rewarded and recognized. That always feels better than being punished and made an example of and humiliated and, yeah, scapegoated and blamed. And so, yeah, that was one thing that I was, noticing at play. Yeah. Um, that it was letting go of those like needs, like to like be recognized or be seen or to prove myself as worthy or to be seen as right. I can let all of that go. But it's just like, oh wow, like this gives me deeper insight into it, where it stems from. So I can see why we're always wanting to be seen as right, this unconscious obsessive drive to be seen as worthy, to be seen as right, to be enough, to feel that sense of pride, to be as we believe we need or ought to be, but we can't ever quite measure up to this false standard. Like, yeah, this idealistic perfection, this inherited belief. Inherited beliefs or implanted beliefs of idealistic perfection. So guilt, shame, pain, and suffering, poverty, lack of vanity, greed, fucked up bullshit stories. The false image, the fragile ego, wanting some surrogate parent or adopted family member to see us as right and worthy of loving, worthy of being included and good enough. Wanting to make someone proud of me so they can validate my worth, value, and goodness for me. And the feelings of anger and deprivation when I wasn't received or seen as I would have liked to be seen. Oh, that really is super interesting. Thanks, superego, for this new, clearer understanding. The false perfectionist. Yeah, false standards, false beliefs, false ideals, false values of the superego or the spiritual ego. And so, a couple months ago, I flipped open my Letting Go by David R. Hawkins, The Pathway of Surrender. And I had read a little bit about pride, and I was like, oh, that'd be like good chapter to, revisit and review now. So I did flip it open, and that's like exactly where I opened it to. It was page one. Here we go. Let's see, where were we? Yeah. I think it was 150. And yeah, that was chapter 9, Pride. But yeah, I found some cool things in here actually, and so I wanted to share with you. So this is what I wrote down from, I kind of took it from the book and paraphrasing some of it. So this false vanity, false pride, false humility, false virtue, false value, false pedestal, false perception of the false image. Pride, a destructive defense mechanism of the ego. And pride is devoid of love. It is essentially destructive. Pride may take the form of overvaluation, denial, playing the martyr, being opinionated, arrogant, boastful, inflated, one up, holier than thou, vain, self-centered, complacent, aloof, smug, snobbish, prejudiced, bigoted, pious, contemptuous, selfish, unforgiving, spoiled, rigid, patronizing, judgmental, pigeonholing, and milder forms. So, intellectual pride leads to ignorance, and spiritual pride is the main block to spiritual development and maturation in everyone. A substitute, pride is a substitute for genuine self-esteem, which doesn't actually arise until pride is relinquished. That which inflates the ego does not result in inner strength. A tireless preoccupation with appearance and what other people will think. So there is a constant vulnerability to the opinions of others. So when we let go of our need for external validation or ego validation to prove ourselves right, then the challenges against us fall away. Healthy pride is genuine self-esteem and inner awareness of one's true value and worth. The inner awareness is different from the energy of pride. Self-awareness of one's true value is characterized by a lack of defensiveness. That which we truly know never needs defense. Once we have consciously contacted the truth of our real beingness, the nature of our inner self, with all of its true innocence, greatness, and nobility of the human spirit, we no longer need pride. We just know what we are, and this self-knowledge is sufficient for us. David R. Hawkins. So yeah, we are enough, we are loved, we are worthy, we know our own value and the truth of who we are. If we love something, we know its worth and value. Our love and appreciation for what we value is solid, and there is no need to defend or feel prideful, on guard, or defensive. Pride infers subtly that there is room for debate. Pride infers subtly that there is room for debate and that the worth of something is open to question. So the smaller we feel within, the more we need to compensate for an inner sense of inadequacy, unimportantness, and valuelessness by the substitution of the emotion of pride. Yeah. So the smaller that we feel within, the more we need to compensate for that like inner sense of inadequacy or the not enoughness. It says, the more that we surrender our negative, destructive, or rigid emotions, beliefs, and false images, the less we will rely on the false crutch of pride. The truly humble cannot be humbled. They are immune to humiliation. True humility is experienced as peacefulness. They have nothing to defend. There is nothing to be offended by and no need to react. What is the purpose of pride? What is the payoff? Why do I seek it? For what does it compensate? What do I get to realize about my true nature in order to let pride go without a feeling of loss? So I thought those were good questions to ask. What is the purpose of pride and what is the payoff? Why do I seek it? For what does it compensate? And what do I get to realize about my true nature in order to let pride go without a feeling of loss? And so, yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. And just looking into, some of these old resentments, because I was just like, man, I'm just so done with like some of these expectations. Like I really I know it's really true, but like there was still something that was hooking me into like this old pattern and this old dynamic. And so and I was seeing it in certain ways, like when it would come up, like the Mother Superior would come up in certain plays, and so I just got to see that, and just wanted to share a little bit more about pride from letting go. And I thought it was pretty cool. So we already went over, some of that. So what can we choose instead of pride? Joy and gratitude. So because pride is sometimes seen as a motivator of achievement, what would be its higher level substitute? One answer would be joy. What is wrong with joy as the reward for successful achievement rather than pride? Pride carries with it the desire for recognition from others, and consequently there is a vulnerability to anger and disappointment if it is not forthcoming at some point. So, if we achieve a certain goal for the pleasure, enjoyment, love of accomplishment, and the inner joy that it brings to us, we are invulnerable to the reaction of others. We can recognize our proneness to pain by looking at the kind of reactions we are hoping to elicit from others by our choices and behavior. And so that was like one question that I had asked myself last week was like, okay, so is this part of me like addicted to the feedback, or just so hungry for like this acknowledgement and this recognition and this validation on the outside? And it's just like, yep, that is like my wounded child and my idealist. And so if we achieve a certain goal for the pleasure, enjoyment, love of accomplishment, and the inner joy that it brings to us, we are invulnerable to the reaction of others. We can recognize our proneness to pain by looking at the kind of reactions we are hoping to elicit from others by our choices and behavior. This includes mannerisms, expressions, style of dress, the